In this video, we're going to show some tips and tricks for moving cameras around within a scene. This could be anything from traversing a camera, that is like a first-person view from point A to point B. It could also be from moving a camera from one position to another position instantaneously, or switching cameras. This is useful for things like moving or changing scenes or creating levels within a larger scene. So we're going to cover a lot of that in this video, and so let's get started. I'm starting in a scene that I've already built a few things. I've already added a quad and then added some texture to be our ground. I've also added 4 boxes and then changed their names and colors to room 1, 2, 3, 4, and then different colors. And I've also changed one setting, which is important, under material and then culling, this property. I've changed the cull face from back to front. This allows us to see from the inside out. So if I go in the middle of this room, I'll move my camera inside. You see I can see from the inside out. So I can see the interior walls. So if then I move outside, I can still only see the interior of that box. So I can see through the outside to the inside. Okay, so let's talk about what the various options for moving cameras around. You might be familiar with the Orbit Cam. If you haven't, I would suggest you look at some of our other videos that we listed in the description of this video to get a better feel for how to use cameras and the different types of cameras, because this video isn't going to be so much focused on cameras, but I will cover it very quickly. An Orbit Cam is a camera that orbits around a center point. And the default camera that you see in your scene, that you will always have in your scene, that is also a default camera. I just added an Orbit Cam just to make it a little bit more clear. And the editor camera, that is the camera we're using right now in editor mode, it is also an editor cam, or an Orbit Cam. As I'm holding my right mouse button down, I am orbiting around a center point, and then I can also hold shift and left mouse button to pan left and right, up or down. If I select this, if I have my Orbit Cam selected, and then I select or expand script, there's a bunch of properties here that I can change. So a lot of the settings you can change, but that's what it is by default. Okay, and then when I press play, it'll also still be an Orbit Cam if my camera is set as my Orbit Cam is set as the main camera. So and this is how you change it to be whatever you want to be your main camera. That is the camera that is used during in play mode or in your published scene. You gotta select it as the main camera. All right, that's Orbit Cam. The Fly Cam is another camera that I want to talk a little bit more in depth about. The Fly Cam is a traversing camera, so that it gives you the ability to have a quasi first-person player view, like you would see in a first-person game. All right, so I have it selected, and I might as well just show you how it works. I have Fly Cam selected, and then I will select it as my main camera. And I'll open up the script component too while I do this. I'll go ahead and press play. And this uses, I'll click here to get a live view, the WASD keys. That is W, A, S, and D. So that when I press the Y key, I move forward. And the S key, I move backwards. And A will go strafe left, D will strafe right. It also responds to my mouse, so I can move the head around, or move the camera around, kind of like a head on a swivel, or a kind of like a first-person human perspective would be. But as I move forward and I move my camera around, it will still move forward to wherever my camera is pointed. So if I point straight up in the air, I will start flying away from the ground, as you can see. That's why it's called a Fly Cam. And if I point down, I will go down into the ground. Now, one thing to note is that currently in Sumerian, cameras do not respond to colliders. So I don't have colliders attached to these entities, these boxes or grounds, but even if I did, the behavior would be the same, is that you can go right through them. So that's how the Fly camera works. Of course, you can make all these different adjustments, but the way it's set up by default is that you can fly into the air, so you're not locked in a certain position. You really can move about in any way you choose. Lots of uses. It's not perfect for every use case, but of course there are some important use cases for it. Okay, so that is the Fly Cam. The other cam that you can use is a fixed cam. And what we're going to use this one for, I've already added it. To add cameras, just go to Create Entity, And there's different cameras down here. We've talked about the orbit. We've talked about the fly. Now we're going to talk about the fixed cam. We're not going to cover 2D cameras in this video. I will close that, and I will select my fixed cam, open up my camera component, and then select it as the main camera. As you would expect, just like the name suggests, it is fixed. It is a fixed cam, so you can't actually move it at all. But it is perfect for adding custom scripts to it so that you can add some custom movement. If you find in the description of this video, there is a script you can download. If you download that script and open it up, just go ahead and copy and paste. Or not paste yet, but copy that script. And that's what we will do here. I am copying the script. And then I will come back over here into my editor, and then I will add a component, and I will add a script component. And then I will press the plus button to then add a custom script. If I select it, this will allow me to change the name, and I'll say fly first, we'll call it first person camera. All right. And then I will click edit in the editor, text editor. Now you can see that I have my first person camera script, and I will select all this and then replace it with this new script. I will click save. This script was made and written by a colleague and coworker who wanted to make some improvements or make some different abilities that were a little bit an expansion or similar to the fly cam, but added onto it a bit. And that also added some restrictions that were helpful. And so let's see how that works. I will select now my fixed cam that is really not fixed anymore. I've already made it the main camera. And I'll leave this open here for these properties so we can view it. All right. It also responds to WASI. So there's a move forward, move back, left, and right, just like the fly cam. There's also a rise and fall key, so the E or Q keys. But the difference is that this moves parallel to the ground, or it really moves on one plane. And so if I point up, I am not going to be flying up into the air. I am equally distanced from the ground at all times. However, there is the E and Q keys, or the rise and fall keys, that allow me to go up and down. This script would allow you to create a more realistic first-person view. You can also change the max forward speed. Let's change it to 20. You can see how much faster I'm moving. But still, it does not respond to colliders currently, and so you will still go through walls. Okay, so that is another option, is using this custom first-person camera script. All right, so that covers traversing cameras. That is traversing over the ground or traversing within a scene. So showing the movement from point A to point B, and you have total control on where it goes. Another option to move about within a scene is to switch the camera or move the camera from one location to another. So imagine that you have a large scene, and I will zoom out just to illustrate this a bit. So you have a large scene, and then you have some sub-scenes here, or you can even call them levels. And so in my blue box or my blue room, you could have level 1, and it could be a large building that has some different interactivity in it. And then you have level 2, and then after the user completes all the challenges or whatever it might be, they can then move on to the second room, or the red room, or the green or the purple room. You could also use sky spheres, so that you could create some large sky spheres, add some 360-degree images to those sky spheres, and then you can move the camera from one sky sphere to the next. So that is another option thing you could do. I'm going to show you how to do that, no matter what your levels might look like, whether it's a 360 image, or a sky sphere, or a room, or a building, or a totally different world. Either way, I'm going to show you how to move from your camera from one location to the next, so you can simulate moving between scenes, or create multiple scenes within one larger scene. Okay, so let's get started with this part. All right, I'm going to use my fixed cam as the camera that we're going to simulate the movement for. Or not simulate, we are going to be using as our movable camera. I want to start with it putting it in the middle of the red room. If I select the red room, I can see what my the transform values are 57, 50. All right, so I'll take my fixed cam and I'll move it there. Also, 57, 50. All right, you can see the preview down there is right in the middle. And then I want to be able to move it to the middle of the blue room. So I want to go from red room to blue room. Well, where is my blue room? I do need to know where it's located, so I'll select the blue room. And it is negative 57, 50. We'll just note those values. All right, so let's select our fixed cam. We'll add a component, and we'll add a state machine to this camera. We'll press the plus button to add a new behavior, and we will call this move camera. All right. The first state we're going to call key down, and we're going to initiate these movements by pressing keys. So we'll call it key pressed or key down. That's what I meant to say. Then we will add action, and then we are going to search for key down. You know how that we are using the WASD keys already with our fly cam, or for our fixed camera that moves, our first person camera. So I'm going to change this to Z. We'll use the Z keys. All right, and what we actually have to do is, because there are 4 different rooms, we're going to have 4 different key downs to be able to move to each different room. So I'm just going to then add action, add another key down, add action, another key down, and one more time. So now we have 4 key down actions. I'm going to change each of these. Instead of Z, I'll make this one X, this one letter, or this key down, the C button, and then this one, the V button. All right, so in one state, we have multiple states multiple actions, that can transition to multiple states. And so I will add another action, and we'll just call it blue room. And we are going to add action, move. We're just going to search for the move action. And this is just going to move an entity. I'm going to unselect oriented and relative. And then all I need to do is put the translation in of the location I want it to move. If you remember, the blue room is located at negative 50, 7, 50. Then want to add action. This is an important one that's different from a lot of times what I recommend, which is we want to add a transition action, but instead of just transition, we want transition on next frame. I'm saying that slowly to really iterate it. Transition on next frame. I believe this is true, that the reason why we need this is because we have on every frame selected for this move. But either way, this is what will allow it to work. Now let's just test it out. I want to drag my on key Z down, transition to the blue room, and then my transition on next frame, go back to key down. This means that my Z key is connected to my blue room. So let's press play. See, I'm looking around in the red room. I press the Z key, and it moves, but it is not quite there. And let's check out why. It's because I goofed up the value. So let's try that again. Let's press the Z key. Now I'm in the blue room. Perfect. All right. It works. Now I just need to duplicate these states to be purple room, duplicate state, green room, and red room. We're going to start in the red room, but we also want to be able to get back to the red room. The purple room, I have to look at the values. So it's negative 50 and negative 50 on both of those values on the X and Z. So you just need to add a negative. I know the red room is positive 57, positive 50. The green room has to be positive 50, 7, and negative 50. And now we're going to connect my X key down action to purple room, my X key C down to the green room, and the V key down to the red room. So, all right, I start in the red room, press the Z key, I switch to the blue room, press the X key, and I go to the purple room, press the C key, and I go to the green room, and the V key, I go back to the red room. Okay, so that is how you would simulate moving your camera from one location to another. Again, that is useful it's useful in a lot of ways, but one, actually having multiple scenes within a larger scene. Okay, so that is one way to do it. Another way to do it is then to actually switch your cameras from one location to another. So I'm going to use this orbit cam, and I'm just going to place this, let's just do it right. I'll put it here in -50, 7, 50. So that places it right in the middle of my blue room. And imagine I could also put a camera over here in the purple room. I could put another camera in the green room, and I can put as many cameras as I want. But now we're going to then select my fixed cam. I'm going to remove the mover camera behavior, and I'm going to add another behavior called the switch camera behavior. Okay, so now I'm going to do key down again, add action, key down. We'll use the Z key again. We're going to call this one switch camera, and we'll search for switch camera. And the camera we're going to switch to is the orbit cam. We want to be able to then also switch from, we can add another key down action here. So I'll add a key down action, and we'll make it the X key. And we will add another state. And we'll call this one switch camera again. And we'll search for the switch camera. And this camera we'll select to go back to the fixed cam. And this one we're going to also search for the transition. We'll just do transition on next frame. All right, so I start with this key down, I go to switch camera, and then I go to another switch camera, and then back to key down. So really what is happening, I press the Z key, it transitions to this switch camera, which switches it to the orbit cam. It then will wait for me to hit the X key, so to transition to the next switch camera, which will then automatically go back. Okay, so then let's hit the Z key. All right, it switches. I'm now but I have an orbit cam, so you see how it operates a little bit different. But then I hit the X key and it goes back to the red key. So again, this is another way. So instead of moving your camera from one location to another, you're switching the camera from one camera to another. Okay, that's another way to do it. Another way, or another tip that you could do this is to physically have Another option for switching locations or sub-scenes is what I'm calling them, or rooms or environments, is to have them both environments living in the same location, but you're just hiding and showing one at a time. So let's do this using the red and blue, but I'm going to move the blue room in the same location as my red room. So I'm just going to remove remove that negative so it is the same values as the red room. And they're actually living on top of each other. To be honest, I don't know why you can see the blue over the red because they're both in the same space. But there can be some times in which when you get really far away, you can see some odd behavior, not odd behavior, but you see what's called some Z fighting. And you can see that a little bit down here in the green room underneath the green floor. As I do that, you kind of see the camera, because it's so far away, doesn't really know which texture is in front of which. And so to work with that, what you need to do is just separate them a little bit more. We're not seeing that right now with the blue and red, or the blue and red room. So to change that, let's just change the scale to 21. Now as we go back, there's that Z fight I'm talking about. You see how it's kind of going, I'm not quite sure which is which. The blue room is slightly bigger than the green room, as you can see, but once you get really far away, it's hard to tell. Okay, so imagine that this is two different environments, and you want to be able to switch from one environment to the next. Well, instead of, so you see we have the red room just inside the blue room. So another option is that we want to hide one room and show another. So let's remove this behavior off of the fixed camera. Instead, what we want to do is just add something onto the red room. Really, you could do it either one. There's a few different ways around this, but we're just going to add a state machine to the red room. Press the plus button, and we'll call this one hide show room. So we will start with another, surprise, surprise, key down. And we'll search for key down. And we'll just keep using the Z key. And this will transition to a hide action. And then we'll search for a hide action. Again, there's no transition, so we do need to add a transition action onto it. If I did that a little too quick, I'll go back. I just added this, or search for transition, or I found this transition action. And I added that on there. Okay, and then let's duplicate the key down action and change the Z to X. Then we'll add one more action, which is show. We do need to add a transition. And let's rename this state show. Press play. So I'm hitting the Z key, and it switched. You see, again, we didn't move our camera. All we did was actually swap out our environment. So I hit the X key, and all this is doing, the blue room is not going anywhere. It's the red room that is changing. So I'm hiding and showing the red room, but you kind of get that effect of changing rooms, at least to some degree. Now, because I'm not actually changing the blue room, you can do something pretty easily to add on to that. So say you actually wanted to hide one and show the other one. You can simply duplicate this, and let's have the hide and show room 2. But instead of going from hiding to showing, we're going to have to go in the other direction. So I'm just going to remove all of these transitions and just go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go to show first. So I'm really just making the inverse of the other behavior. So hide show room 2 is going to be the inverse. So when I press the Z key, it'll show instead of hide. And then when I press the X key, it'll hide instead of show. The one caveat is that you probably want to make, because it'll be, if you want to show it, it has to be hidden first. So we'll make the blue room not visible. So over here in the entities panel, I will hide that room to begin with. But also, I created the state machine behavior, but I haven't added it to my entity. So I do need to add a state machine component to my blue room and then drag this over there. So now it is actually applied. Okay, so let's see what happens. It's going to really be the same effect. But really, we're hiding and showing in... Actually, I'll move out of here so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. So really, we're hiding and showing those two different rooms. And again, you can do that. That's another way. Instead of moving your cameras or switching cameras, you just hide and show what is actually around you. Okay, a third option to do something very similar is to physically move the rooms from one location to another. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I have already built a scene, and I'm going to jump to that scene and show you. Okay, this is a different scene. It's duplicated, but changed a little bit. And what I've done is I've added this rooms entity, just an empty entity, and I have added all of these rooms to it. Difference is they're all, the center of this entity is right here. They're all the equally same size as each other, but I've moved each one, let's look at the transform, over by 0.1. And so I've added just 0.1 buffer. So they're not actually, the walls are not in the same location. They're pushed out a little bit from each other by 0.1. But we're not going to go over how we do this. It's pretty easy to just line these up equally and then nest them under this larger room's parent entity. Okay, and so how do you do this? Or how do we want to move this? We're going to go to State Machine, press the plus button, and we're going to add a key down action. So I'll rename the state key down and then add action, key down. And we'll use spacebar this time to make it a little easier because we're only going to be using one. I'm then going to add an action, and we're going to call it rotate. I'm going to add an action called tween rotate. All I want to do is actually move this, rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And I can change the easing type to directional in and out. So we have a tween rotate action that is 90 degrees. We have set to relative. It is an easing type of exponential, and the direction is in and out. Now we just need to link these up with transitions. Press play. You see it moves. So it's actually rotating. I can move my camera out so we can see that a little bit better. So really it's just like a carousel. So instead of hiding and showing a room, you could actually have one come in and one come out. You don't have to have a tween so you see the animation. And remember, a tween action of some kind, this being a tween rotate, will actually show the animations or the change from one location to another. You can just do a move action, just like we did before with the cameras, and move them in and out, and it does it instantaneously, and you won't see any sort of animation. But so that's why you could click a button or have something happen where, you know, one environment moves in, the other one moves out, or they swap or move around. So that is another option for how to move your cameras around. All right, so in this video, we've covered a few things. We've shown how to move, traverse cameras around using the fly cam and also a special script that we have provided. Additionally, we have shown you how to switch your cameras, move your cameras, change the environment in multiple ways. And so those are some good solid tips and tricks for moving your camera around your scene to simulate changing and swapping out environments. Thanks for watching.